but also there needs to be some intrinsic motivation.
Correct.
And what I'm observing at the moment is we're all in these sort of, particularly in Western Australia, we live in these small houses, we get in our cars and we drive to work and leading very sedentary lives, and you can spend days upon days, let's say if you're on holidays or even over the weekend, not leaving the house but still hypothetically communicating with people via social media.
Correct.
And it's person-to-person interaction. And what I find interesting, getting back to Parkinson's disease, which is all I ever talk about, I find it's a disease that demands interaction. It's like, it's a syndrome, it's a bunch of symptomologies that are different, that manifest differently in every single person. But the end result is the same, and it's incurable and it's progressive. But we can't look at it, and this is a little bit off the topic of brain cancer, but similar in fact, we can't look at prevention strategies without understanding the complex, how all of these things interplay. And so,
well, interesting, I was listening to Dr. David Eagleman, as we talked about before, and what was brought up during an interview was that they studied a whole lot of nuns, and I don't know the data set personally, I just heard them talking about it. They said in around 1/3 of nuns, they actually had dementia, pathologically. So when they looked at the brain, they had all the symptoms of dementia. However, as people, they weren't presenting. And they believe that the reason why these nuns were like that, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with their conclusion on this, but it's definitely one of the stories that could occur, is that the interactions with people, it creates a very plastic mind. And this is backing up what you're saying, because our mind can't continually play the same thing like we could do if we did a job that was just making widgets, ABC, 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 ABC. Our brains, I think, die. And we talked about this before, even in my visit to Mayo Clinic, and how they are so specialised in what they do, which I don't believe is good for the brain or for your soul, to be honest. And so,
going back to the nun thing, I read a book by Joseph Knoll called The Brain and Itself, and basically he studied in rat models, so from birth to weaning to sexual maturity. So your secretion of neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, all the rest of it. So from weaning to adolescence, your peak secretion, so your peak neurotransmitter activity actually stops. No, it's at its height when you reach sexual maturity, and then it goes down, okay? And so basically what they did is they castrated a lot of these rats, okay, a study group, and they found that through castrating them, their neurotransmitter secretion stayed stable, if not, I'll send you the text later. But when we're talking about nuns, right, you've heard the term lovesick, so when you fall in love, like your brain just goes to mush, okay?
Sure.
Well, that's sort of interesting, so nuns, hypothetically, live a celibate life, and, that sort of drive to copulate, procreate, whatever is necessarily...
Part of the genetics,
Yeah, it's that choice is taken away from them. So it's just interesting that maybe that's the answer to optimal brain health.
Yeah, maybe.
Castration.
And, I remember reading a fictional text, and it was based on Leonardo da Vinci painting The Last Supper. And Leonardo had said to a guy that was pretty much his apprentice in the book, and I don't know where it came from, how factual it was, but he postulated that you can't achieve as much as you can in a lifetime as soon as you have a partner, because too much of your energy will be put towards that partner, and therefore, in terms of success in a given profession, you've now watered it down. You go and have children, you pretty much will never ever reach your full potential. So that was an interesting discussion, and I wonder whether it wasn't just a time-based fractionalisation, it was actually almost an emotional energy perspective.
Well, your CNS is an energy-saving system, okay? So it's not going to expend energy at the expense of something else. And so I think it was Nietzsche that said that women who are, involved in academia, there's something that's actually wrong with them.
Okay.
I disagree.
Yes.
Quite a controversial statement to make, but
yes, definitely, and a different time and place. So
yeah, it was shortly before he entered into an asylum. But anyway, but I mean, we can't. Multitasking is a misnomer. Like, it's a fallacy. You can only focus on one thing.
Correct.
So you're either full noise into your academia, or if you're super talented and you can compartmentalize.
Yeah.
But getting back to brain cancer, and and Charlie's approach of thinking outside of the box, are you confident that this could be achieved?
Thinking outside the box, I think there's a lot of possibilities in achievement. I think that the world is based in almost like a challenge versus solution environment, and we can all talk about the meaning of life, but we've known for a long period of time that human evolution does involve that. We have a problem, we solve it. We have a problem, we solve it. And as humans, we're able to jump on the back of the solutions from the past and then springboard into the future. Without being closed-minded about it, I think that every problem has its own solution. And it's just a matter of having the willingness to commit to it wholeheartedly. And whether you will come across it or not, I don't think it's up to us, personally. I think that if we're in the right place at the right time, we'll be given the information. And I do believe that all the great thinkers, they didn't come to it because they worked it out as a mathematical equation. I believe that...
I do like maths.
They're creative elements that come to us when we're sitting on the toilet, or we've gone for a bike ride and actually removed our brains out of the process, and then we quieten the brain enough so that the creative idea comes through.
It's like quietening the brain so the mind can be still in order that you can receive instruction from the universe.
Correct. Yeah, and that's the way that I see it. I might be controversial as a scientist for saying that sort of thing, but we've come up with ideas, and I don't believe that those ideas have come because I sat in a regimented fashion. I believe that it was that I was given an issue, and the answer came to me. I didn't almost think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a
These
very
things happen
process.
organically, and it's so exciting because Joseph Knoll, that guy that I was talking about before, he was saying that when you're in the process of creating something new and beautiful, something that has not been done before, that is for the betterment of humanity, it is a drug.
It is.
It's
Absolutely.
the greatest drug ever, and he calls it, he postulates that things like addiction and depression and sort of psychiatric disturbances. It's basically because we haven't found what lights us up.
Correct. And I completely agree with that. And we had the conversation earlier on about we focus so much on the outside world looking for happiness, and then we think that if we string enough of these happiness events together, that then we will have salvation from the suffering of the world. I agree with the Buddha in saying that suffering is part of our existence, and I don't think...
you can't have a rainbow without rain.
Agreed. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So the idea that you could string enough happiness events in your life together to, always be happy, I don't think it exists. But I do believe that we can find peace within the suffering, and that's inside.
Or even purpose within the suffering.
Sure.
This suffering is helping me grow.
Yep.
So Dr. Andrew Huberman, actually, he does a lot of. He's a professor of neuroscience at Harvard, and he studies a lot into courage, fear, and certain structures of the brain. And I was talking. He's a skateboarder too.
Yeah,
you should maybe look him up.
Give you some skills, right?
Yeah. But he was saying that when something traumatic happens to you, like he was diving, I think it was a couple of years ago, and his oxygen tank switched off. Thankfully, he had great sort of vagal nerve control, and so he was able to sort of down-regulate his breathing and stuff like that. But he was effectively close to he was running out of oxygen. He was well beneath the sea. And the first thing that happened when he came up to the surface is rather than everyone saying, "Are you okay?" his mentor said, "What have you learned from this?"
Wow.
And I think that is a much better
way to do it.
Yeah. So
I remember experience with my son, and who used to love playing on escalators, and I was, they're not safe. They're not toys. Don't run up and down escalators. There's a chance you'll hurt yourself. And he kept doing it. And I've always tried to teach my children that there's an easy way and the hard way. The easy way is you listen to those that have learnt the lesson before. The hard way is finding out for yourself. And so he ended up going up escalators, and he slipped by stepping on the side of the escalator. It turned him upside down, and he went face first into the edge of the step of an escalator.
Yeah.
And so he cut all his face open, and blood was all coming down. The security officer came along, and we cleaned him up, and he said, "Oh, Dad, today's a bad day." And I said, "It's not. It's a good day, because you've learned a very important lesson today, because I gave you the lesson in words, and now you've learnt the lesson the hard way."
Well, the only way we ever learn things is the hard way.
I don't agree with that. I know a lot of people say that. I don't agree with it, and I think our models of learning suggest that we can get to learning from other people's experiences. And human evolution shows that we can springboard off learning. So I think a lot of us, we kind of had to jump in the deep end to work out how to swim, and I do appreciate that as a model. I just don't think it's the only one. And I think as a more conscious being, the more that we are engaged in a higher level learning experience, that we stop having to learn the hard way. So, but stuff still hurts. There's no avoiding challenge. There's no avoiding suffering. But yeah, we can start to learn differently.
And they opt to avoid challenge, and they opt to avoid suffering.
Sure, because they believe that will reduce it, but it doesn't reduce it. I think that suffering and pain will find you in the deepest, darkest hole that you hide in, and it's harder. It can
happen to you on a Tuesday morning when you're at Coles and they've run out of coconut milk.
Exactly right.
This could be the end of the world as someone knows it.
Especially when your world becomes small like that. And I believe that by running away from the world, that you do make your world really, really small, and anything that affects that, it's really hard because you're no longer fighting. You haven't got the strength anymore to get up. So that coconut water knocks you off your feet, and everybody else goes, "Well, what's that all about?" It's because your world's become so small. So it doesn't get easier by making it smaller. I've seen modelling where they talk about if your life is split up into 9 equal sections, and you lose one of those sections, then the chances of suffering, the amount of suffering is much smaller than if you only had 4 boxes. And if you have, say, a person that's like your whole life, and you suddenly remove that person, we've lost so much of ourselves because our whole world was that one person. And I don't think that's good for our mind state.
Sort of growth mindset either. It's like, inspiration, be it academic or artistic or whatever, it arrives in so many different ways, either by interaction with people or with nature or what have you. And it's almost not even fair to, because you would know our cells regenerate. We're completely different people now from what we were.
Even 30 days ago, we have
right? And so I think it places a tremendous amount of expectation, of burden, of responsibility. This whole sort of, not discrediting marriage, I'm sure it's great for a lot of people, but to put every single thing that you require in a companion on the shoulders of one person.
It's almost it's not fair.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
And we don't need to burden another person with what we should be taking responsibility for. I think that's a very important part within a relationship, is understanding that we need to take responsibility for what's ours, and we should be willing and helpful with the other person's issues when required, but we also need to recognise when it's that person's issue, and we need to stand back and let them resolve it themselves, because we're not empowering them by fixing their problems all the time.
It's clinical detachment, loving detachment, Well, anyway, it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Kate. Always a pleasure.
And I'd really encourage you to learn on a longboard. Because it's actually really good for core strength, okay? And so you'll start to appreciate the world a lot more. And that might help you, I don't know, with your posture, then your Ph.D. gets along quicker, who knows?
That's it.
Think outside the box.
Exactly right.
4 wheels.
And keep doing different